Well, welcome to our continuing series on the Antichrist. I am your host, Craig Winn, and we have over here the beautiful Leah and the very happy and content Wookie as co-hosts, and Rich over there is the keeper of the cables. I always cringe a bit, and I have to use air quotes when I put the name of this series to you as the Antichrist, because well, quite frankly,
I'm the Antichrist.
There was no Christ, and I am, and we all should be Antichrist, because it is not just a fraud, and there are lots of cases of identity theft in the world.
Mr. Christ is a fraud, through and through.
Yeah, so with
there it is.
Countless cases of identity theft in the world. Normally you wouldn't be all that concerned, except in this particular case, the identity that they stole was the very Son of God, his Messiah, the King of Israel. It is the worst case of robbery.
The biggest crime in history.
In the history of the world. And so it is.
And the longest perpetrated as well. Yeah.
It was perpetrated initially by Paul. AntiChrist makes his first appearance in Paul's letter to the Galatians in 52 CE. And it is based entirely on robbing one person and one myth of their identity. The person is Dowd, who was the actual Messiah, the actual Son of God, according to God. And, well, his opinion should matter in this case. He's the one who says of Dowd, he is my son, I am his father, 3 times. Dowd would live.
He's a poet, a prophet, a king, a warrior, a lover. There was a lot going on. A musician.
Yeah, that's a lot on his plate. Mm-hmm. He would say that Dowd is the anointed Messiah 3 times. He wouldn't do that of anyone else. He would say that Dowd is the King of Israel and going to be the returning King of the universe forevermore. He would say of Dowd that he is his chosen one. He would say that Dowd is his Bukor, his firstborn. He said these things of no one else. He also said that Dowd, upon his return, would be as brilliant as the sun, and that he would be Elyon. Elyon is always translated as the Almighty, but that's not what the word means. El is the word for mighty one or God, but on as an ending in Hebrew means all things pertaining to, and the Yod here adds the hand or influence of God. So it's all things pertaining to the hand or influence of God is the title that Yahowah gave to Dowd and to no one else. This myth of Jesus is never mentioned anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. There is no hint that there was a Jesus who was to be the Son of God. There is no hint that there was to be a Christ who was a Messiah by the name of Jesus either. None. These are just absolute ripoffs, thievery from God's beloved Son and our Messiah and King, Dowd David. So there was no Mr. Christ. That being the case, why you would say, would I use the term Antichrist? Well, we should all be Antichrist, and therefore this is a perfect title for this, because Christ is nothing but a crude counterfeit and ripoff of the truth. But also, there is a person whose identity has been sought for the past 19 centuries, that is known to Christians and to the world all over as the Antichrist. And I determined the identity of that individual. I did so by studying the testimony that is provided through Daniel, the testimony that is attributable to the book of Ezekiel, the testimony that is presented throughout the prophet Yeshaya. And in so doing, I was able to discern with 100% certainty that Donald Dumpster, the President of the United States, is the Antichrist.
Or the Towrahless one.
to use the terminology that would be presented by Yahweh's prophets, he is the Towrahless one. To use Ezekiel's terminology, he is the copper confabulator. He is bronze boy. He is the man who is the real estate developer who measures a monstrosity of a temple to have naming rights that is to be plastered on top of not only the Temple Mount, but all of Jerusalem and covering over all of Yehudah if allowed to build it. But he is Satan's little helper. And in the book of Daniel, he is described as a man with a trash mouth, a man with a goatish comb-over hair, as an elderly fellow that likes to meddle in everyone's business, who destroys his own country and then sets the world afire in war.
Let me see. Check. Who do you think this could be?
And Yashaya Isaiah, he goes into great lengths in the 14th chapter to describe the one that is Mr. Babel, from the basis of Hillel ben Shakar, which is Satan's name, describing the one that he will possess in the end. And he describes him as a man who seeks to be worshipped, not just as if he were God, but as Elion, as the very title that Yahweh gave his beloved son. You see, Satan knows he can't be God, but he therefore is jealous for the title that he thinks he can convince people that he has. And that is the Son of God. That is why the myth of Jesus was created. It is explained in the 14th chapter of Isaiah. Satan wants to replace David, the beloved Son of God, our Messiah.
He does.
And of course, he cannot do that, but he will convince the majority of people that he has there for the religion of Christianity. So this is the story. And of course, then to fight the religion of Christianity, Judaism created the myth that God is incorporeal and that he cannot manifest himself in any way, that God cannot have a son. And that is simply untrue. God can project aspects of his nature in a corporeal way. He does so throughout the Torah. And God declares bluntly, boldly, through the Mizmor, that he has a beloved son, and that son was offered to us as a gift. So here we are. We have a vivid description, and we also know by way of confirmation that an exceedingly arrogant individual who is meddling in everyone's affairs and has at his disposal a powerful military, particularly in its flying machines, that he is the individual that ultimately betrays Israel. He is the one who offers the heart of Israel to be an Islamic state. And that individual is an American based upon the testimony of Isaiah in the 18th chapter. And he says in the 17th chapter that this is going to occur commiserate with the celebration of Shabuah, which is June 11th, 2027. There's also a celebration of Shabuah on 22 May of 2026. Either of those dates can work for the affirmation of this covenant with many that thins Israel as the waste, that makes Israel indefensible, that is perpetrated by the arrogant and meddling leader of the United States of America. And so, since that is Donald J. Trump, Donald J. Trump is the Antichrist.
The copper confabulator.
The copper confabulator. Confabulation, by the way, is a medical term. It's a medical diagnosis. Don't get credit for this one in terms of being the first person to hear it. It was Dr. Jeff, a Jewish covenant member who is a medical doctor in Arizona, who was actually the first Yehudim to read my books and to capitalize on the covenant through what I had written and come to know Yahowah. He is the one who told me that the condition that Trump is suffering from is called confabulation. What that means is that in his mind, he perceives something that has no basis in reality. that when he speaks of things, meetings that he's had, deals that he's made, numbers that he thinks are valid, that
he just pulls them out of his tuchus.
In his mind, they may or may not be true. It
doesn't matter.
His truth doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant.
Him. It's just this is what he wants to be true, and therefore he claims it as true. And when there is no association with it. Now, some will extrapolate confabulation to say that they actually believe what they're saying is true when they are lying. And that isn't not necessarily true.
It's a little different.
This is just
a different mechanism.
What he has come in his mind to perceive as accurate, and nothing will change that until the next day when he may view something entirely different and therefore say something entirely different. The other thing that it is
this is part of psychopathy.
Yes, it's a
feature
of psychosis. But there is now a growing awareness, maybe because of this Yahowah blog, of Trump suffering from confabulation, such that they are trying to explain it in psychiatric terms and saying that it's a sign of early onset dementia. And while it can be, it isn't always. And in this case, Donald Trump has actually suffered from confabulation for a very long time.
His whole life.
It's really his whole life. Every time that
we have
a recording of what he has said, he has confabulated.
Yes.
So it is not in his case
it's not associated with dementia. No. Right. Sorry, Charlie.
What it is, however, is similar to what both Paul and Muhammad suffered from, which is they created this whole myth that they spoke for God, this whole idea of a false God, and projected it so authoritatively that people...
It's called a con because it has confidence behind it.
So he is very similar to them. He is also sexually perverted, as were they. And so in the Donald's case, it is a lifelong condition, but it is a condition that is very appealing to Satan. Satan likes sexual perverts because they're easy to manipulate.
Satan loves anyone without empathy because psychopathy has another key feature. It is the lack of empathy.
Which means that all of Satan's chosen implements are both narcissists and they are psychopaths. Now, I don't think those are necessarily separate concepts. All psychopaths are narcissists.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that all narcissists, however, are psychopaths, but Satan's type is a psychopath who is a narcissist. And the ego that drives these people is explained, for example, in the last chapter of 2 Corinthians, where Paul admits that he is demon possessed and that the purpose is to control his gargantuan ego. And all the way through Paul's letters, the ego is...
And doesn't Trump do the same thing? It's so out there. It is right in front of your face. All of the confabulations, the disgusting and vile past that he has with young women and women in general.
All the same.
His bankruptcies, his bad business deals, his rather strange associations.
It's the exact same scenario we find with Paul. Now, Paul admitted that he was a sexual pervert in his letter to the Romans.
That he did.
And he said that he wouldn't have known he was a sexual pervert, however, had it not been for the Torah that describes his sexual behavior as a perversion. Since the Torah is actually pretty accommodating of most things that a person can do, and God doesn't have an issue with human sexuality. He just says, no incest, no pedophilia, no rape, and no bestiality. Those are his don't do those things. That Paul had to be involved in those things. He either was involved in bestiality and rape and incest or in pedophilia, to have run afoul of these things by his own admission. But you can see this. Donald has the exact same problems. And so did Muhammad. Muhammad got involved in pedophilia.
So much worse.
Incest, rape.
Necrophilia.
Muhammad was the most sexually perverted man to ever have achieved status in the world. And so Satan has a type. And these individuals, these psychopaths, these confabulators, these men of colossal egos, these are Satan's type. And 2 of the 3 admitted to being demon-possessed. And I'm just simply answering the question for you. Yes, Donald Trump is demon-possessed. I don't know if Donald Trump has been demon-possessed his whole life. That's not my call. I can tell you that there is such an enormous difference between Donald Trump 45 and 47 that it is obvious to me that demon possession is what has taken confabulation to the
a whole new level,
and that it would have occurred when the Donald was feeling blue. When he lost the previous election, he couldn't take it, couldn't process it. He had to blame everybody else for it. When he then lost
it's a narcissistic wound.
Legal case after legal case, and was shelling out millions of dollars that he didn't have to give. And he was going bankrupt. He was unpopular. He was being sued to the point that he was about to lose cases that were going to send him to prison. And as a result of these things, he was an egotistical man that had been spit out and chewed up, and he made a deal with the devil. And so the difference between Donald Trump 45 and 47 is explained by the realization he is now demon-possessed. And if you look at his eyes when he speaks, when you listen to the things he says, it's so far beyond confabulation. It's so far beyond
pre-January
narcissism.
6th and post-January 6th, look into the eyes.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. There's something there.
Donald Trump's demon.
It's weird.
And in this case, this isn't your run-of-the-mill demon.
No. This is the
head and expert on run-of-the-mill demons. This is Satan himself. He is the man that
demonology
is discussed throughout the prophets as the Towrahless one that is misconstrued by Christians to be the AntiChrist. That's who we're talking about. That's the purpose of this series, is to explain that. Now,
shivers.
I did not go back into Daniel. I had translated Daniel 4 or 5 years ago for a series of books that I was writing, and at the time, I just didn't know enough to be able to discern the nuances of this book. And the book says in multiple places that it will not be understood. It is literally sealed by Yahowah until the final witness is able to deduce its meaning right before it materializes, and not a moment sooner. And part of the reason that is written that way is there are requirements to understanding it. And one of those requirements, for example, is knowing about
prerequisites.
Yes. You have to know about the Shabuah harvest and what it represents, and approximately when it's going to be fulfilled. You have to know an enormous amount about the most complicated and expressive, beneficial day on God's calendar, which is the day of the herald, Towrah. You have to know what's going to happen that night with the final ingathering of Israelites, the olives. You have to understand what's going to take place the next day with the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah and of Elijah's role in being the master of ceremonies for this event, just as he was when he impugned Israel's propensity to be religious and political 40 Yobel, 288 years prior to this date on Towrah in 2033. It's the 24th of September to a full solar eclipse. And once you know what the purpose is of that event and how Yahweh is going to, and he proclaims this in Zechariah, bring the remnant of Israel from around the world into Jerusalem for the express purpose of being purged by this celebration of the life of the Adamah Parah, which is not, by the way, a red cow. Adamah does mean red. It also means man. And Adam being man, as Adamah, it then would speak of red. And it is addressing Parah. And Parah means a productive bull. So it's a bloody red man of the earth who is serving as a productive bull is the Adamah Parah. And you need to understand how that sacrifice of the Adamah Parah at this time is used not only to rid Israel of all of its enemies, but also to purge the mortal remnant of Israel so that they're ready for the family reunion on Yom Kippurim 10 days later, as the earth is transformed back into the conditions that we experienced in Eden. And until you know that date for certain and what's going to happen on that date, you aren't in a position that you can process any of the information that is provided by Gabriel and Michael. In fact, you even have to, as a prerequisite, understand Hebrew to the point that you know who Gabriel is. Gabriel is presented multiple times as a man. Not as a malach. He is a man. Full stop. And Gabor from Geber means strong man. And Gabor would be strong, powerful, fighter, brave, courageous, capable man. And it is El of God. So it's God's most confident, capable, and courageous man is the Gabor El.
Or simply
and there's
God's
only one
bravest
man that meets that criteria. It's David. So David is the primary prophet that is recorded in the book of Daniel. In fact, in the 9th chapter, when he is speaking of the Messiah, he's speaking of himself and dates his arrival to fulfill Chag Matzah, Pesach Matzah, and Bakurim in 33 CE, which is year 4000 Yah. And so you have to know that. Then you have to have an appreciation for who the other two players are, the witnesses who serve as prophets that present and explain everything that is being presented in Daniel, because Daniel is a nincompoop. His only thing that he's got going for him is he can write. And therefore, he writes down, but does not understand anything that he is told. The other individual that plays a starring role in the revelation is Michael. And he is the one who is right about God. Dode himself, as Gabriel, says that he is the restoring witness from the last days. And that makes Michael Yada. And the other witness who is testifying during this time is Elia. That's the cast of characters. And so you need to know that cast of characters and how they are the three players in the last days. They're the two witnesses are Yada, who is the Adamah Parah. He is Michael, who is there beside Elia on the Temple Mount to call this mortal remnant of Yisrael home. And they are doing so as Dode's heralds to herald the homecoming of the king, which takes place at a date certain. So once you know this, then you can deduce all of the important dates that are given. For example, the first thing we're told is that of the witnesses, and that the two witnesses will be there for a term of Moed, Moedim, and Chesed, half a series of the Moed. The Moed are the 7 meetings to be restored during these appointments with Yahowah. They are Pesach, Matzah, Bakurim, which Dod fulfilled, Shabu and Towrah, which Yada fulfills, Kippurim, which is Dod and Yahowah's homecoming, and Sukkah, where we return to the conditions experienced in the garden.
There's some fine print here, though, that I would like to especially remind Yahud, that the religious ones who put a place setting out for Aliyah, don't do that. You might as well drink the wine and get drunk yourself, because you're not invited.
Yeah, what she's referring to is that at a rabbinical dinner for Passover, they do almost everything wrong. First of all, they throw a zeroah on the plate,
a lamb bone,
and it's a lamb bone, and the zeroah is actually the Passover lamb himself. It's Dod. And second, in the Seder, they will invite Elia to it, and Elia is not going to be there for your dinner. Elia is actually arriving with me on the day after the Passover meal is consumed. Passover meal is consumed as the 14th day begins, which is the evening of the 13th day of Abib. When the sun rises the following day, it's still Pesach. That is the time that Elijah is arriving. He's going to have Passover dinner with Dod and Yahowah in heaven prior to coming down to fulfill the responsibility of drawing our attention to Passover. And second of all, you ought not be setting a place setting for the person who is the most outspoken person in the history of Israel against Israeli religion and therefore Judaism. There is no person who is more vehement in their expression of antagonism towards the religious, particularly in Israel. So he is the absolute wrong guy for you to invite to your dinner. All right. So when you understand all of these things, you know that the concluding date for the time of Yaakov's troubles, which is the subject of much of Daniel, is on Towrah during the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, orchestrated by Elia on the Temple Mount, when Yahowah brings the remnant of Yisrael from around the world to benefit from this and eliminates all of Israel's enemies at the time, which would include all of the Islamic jihadists who have stormed into Israel to wreak havoc with the nation. That is the 24th of September, a Shabat, in 2033. And from there, you have to go backwards. Okay, so this would mean that if you're going to have 3.5 series of Moed Moedim to arrive at the date that the two witnesses would make their appearance on the Temple Mount, it is now Passover and halfway through Passover, just as we're halfway through Towrah, this in 2030. It puts them there on the 18th of April in 2030. So that's the first date that we have now set in stone, established. The next date tells us when the great abomination will take place. The abomination is not curtailing the sacrifice. There's actually no mention of a sacrifice resuming or of a sacrifice being curtailed. What we do know is that the great abomination is when the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan, Donald Trump, will announce that he is a god. And this will occur 1,290 days from the conclusion of the time of Yaakov's troubles. If you go back 1,290 days from that Towrah, you end up at the Ides of March in 2030. This is 33 days before the two witnesses arrive. It is March 15th. And it's going to have all the pageantry of the celebration of Rome and Easter, as it is the single most important day on the Roman, both political and religious calendar. It is the initiation, if you will, of the fourth Reich by Donald Trump. Now, Trump is not going to arrive in Jerusalem and make the claim that he is God all at the same time. His arrival to establish his political supreme ruler credentials will occur on 45 days earlier, it's the last week of Ramadan. Eid al-Fitr will be a grand celebration for him. It's this previous Eid al-Fitr. It was when Donald Trump announced that he became aware that it was his buddies in Saudi Arabia and Qatar that had paid enormous monies to Islamic groups, particularly in Michigan, but in all of the swing states, to vote for Donald Trump because they had bribed him, they owned him, and they did. And not only did Donald Trump acknowledge it, and the polls show that they were like 80% in favor of Donald Trump, who in his first term was anti-Islam, and this term he is not. He is pro-Islam. And so they voted him in and swung the swing states on Donald Trump's behalf. And so during the celebration of the ending of Ramadan, he believed them when they told him that Islam was a loving and peaceful religion, and there's nothing to fear from Islam. And this is what profoundly changed Donald Trump's view of the world.
Wouldn't it be like billions of dollars too in bribes?
He is arriving 7 days on January 29th, prior to this same time. And he's going to establish his political credentials at that time. So now you have four, actually. You have the concluding date of the time of Jacob's troubles, September 24th of 2033, excuse me. Then you have the date that the two witnesses will arrive, which is the 18th of April, Passover in 2030. You have the date that the corporeal manifestation of Satan, the demon-possessed Donald Trump, is going to announce that he is Elyon, and that is going to be on the Ides of March, the 15th of March, 2030. And we're told that he arrives in Jerusalem 45 days prior to that, which would be the 29th of January during the last week of Ramadan. Those are all dates set in stone. We're then told that from beginning to end, actually from end to beginning, the entire time of Jacob's troubles is 2,300 days. So we start at the same place, which is the celebration of the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah on Towrah, 10 days before Yahweh's return, when all of these exceedingly important things transpire. It'll be the greatest show on earth. It'll be the most exciting day and probably play out over 3 days, but the most exciting time in the history of the earth when all of this takes place. That's the ending date. You go forward 2,300 days and you end up at Shabuah in 2027, which is June 11th. So June 11th, 2027 is the beginning of the time of Jacob's troubles. And now you know all of these dates. They've all been established for you. And that was the primary reason that I went back to Daniel, is that I knew all of these dates were established. And then there's one more to be established that'll be in a future program, is that David, as Gabriel, provides the exact moment that he will be fulfilling Chag Matzah in year 4000 Yah, which is 33 CE. And that date then gives you the ability to say, therefore, that is 4,000 Yah. 6,000 Yah becomes 2033. And we can go backwards, and we know that in 1968 BCE was the dress rehearsal for all of this. And the first presentation of Passover occurred in 1968 BCE on Mount Moriah, with Abraham and Yishak serving in the role of Yahweh and Dod, fulfilling Passover on exactly this place, so that 40 Yobel, 2,000 years thereafter, Dod is in that exact same place, and the city of Dod on his Temple Mount, serving as the Passover lamb. and even wrote about how he would be crucified at this time in Roman fashion 1,000 years before he endured the indignity of it. It is an extraordinary story. It is the single greatest discovery ever offered. No one has ever come up with something that is more profoundly important for humankind than to realize that Dode David is the person who was sacrificed via crucifixion as the Passover lamb in year 33 CE, 4,000 Yah. And what that means in terms of opening the door to life, him then with his nefesh soul carrying our guilt into Sheol the following day, depositing it there to perfect us so that we can join him as the children of God on Bekurim, firstborn children. This is the most important discovery in human history.
He even speaks about it in first person. And you know what, it strikes...
It's all written in first person.
It's all written in first person.
Dode identifies himself as the author of the Mizmor song, and then in first person explains exactly what he endured. It is the only eyewitness account that we have of what happened on Pesach Matzon Bekurim in 33 CE. And it is precisely accurate. It is so accurate that what you find is that Dode explained the nuances of crucifixion and how it actually causes the body to die. Medically, almost 3,000 years before we would understand it. And 1,000 years before he endured it. And 700 years before it had even existed as a form of torture and death. And before Rome even existed. And it's just so profoundly important as a prophecy, as is the one that we will get to, which is the last of all of these important Dodean prophecies that tells us exactly the day that Dode would fulfill Chag Matzah, Pesach Matzon Bekurim in year 3,000 Yah.
And there is a second witness, and that is Yahweh, who the song is written by Yahweh to Dode that says, if he's not the Messiah, then I'm a liar. Is that it? Because that's what religion does. It calls Yahweh a liar.
Yeah, I think that there's a better way.
They all have their own false messiahs that they have foisted up, all of them counterfeits to the real thing.
My lovely wife has interjected a conclusion without telling you the pretext that is necessary to understand the conclusion, but I'm happy to do so because it was a very profound statement. The most important lyrics ever written, the most valuable song ever sung, is called Dode's Song. It is the 89th Mizmor, the 89th song. It was written by Yahweh on behalf of his beloved son, and it makes copious claims about Dode David. It calls Dode the Messiah, calls him the Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb of Pesach. It calls Dode the chosen one, calls Dode the very son of God. It tells us that Dode is the one who is the exemplar of the covenant, that he is the one through whom Yahweh enabled the covenant's promised benefits. And it says that Dode is the one who will be returning with Yahweh as brilliant as the sun and as Elion. There are many claims in it, and the claims are stunningly important.
Clear cut.
And it is Yahweh's pronouncement that affirms everything that I'm telling you is true and undeniably true. In one of the statements towards the end of the psalm, Yahweh says that if you fail to acknowledge what he has said, that Dode is the Messiah and no one else, that Dode is the Son of God and no one else, that Dode is the chosen one and no one else, that Dode is the Zeroah, the sacrificial lamb of Passover, and no one else, that Dode is the one who is returning to him, with him, as brilliant as the sun, and no one else. That if you do not agree with those things, that you propose a different alternative, like Bar Kokhba or like Ayusu Christu, that you are calling God a liar. Therefore, the very basis of Christianity is to call God a liar. He does not take that very well. He does not also like your idea of hoisting up a dead God on a stick or showing what is really his son being crucified. He finds it disgusting. And equally disgusting is Judaism, which was based on the false Messiah, Bar Kokhba, from which Jews get their six-pointed star. So this is the great crime, the great travesty of human history. And it all comes to with all of this background that is essential for you to know. And during these culminating days, Hasatan is going to make his last attempt to achieve what he wants most. What does Satan want most, Leah?
He wants to kill everyone, but starting with Jews.
And that is a unique perspective that very few people have. If you know what Yeshaya says about Hasatan, your answer might be that he wants to be worshipped as God, but he actually says he wants to be worshipped as Elyon, and that's Dod's title. The fact of the matter is, in that same text, it says that this corporeal manifestation of Satan is not only going to destroy his own country, but he's going to leave the world almost lifeless. He's going to kill billions. And this is what that war footing is right now that Donald Trump is on with his nuclear confrontation with Vladimir Putin. Now,
Mental midget.
the basis of the Quran, its fundamental basis, when you get it all down to its core, that Allah has declared war on all humankind. It is genocide. Apartheid that leads to genocide. According to the Quran, all Muslims must die killing for Allah. After all Muslims have died killing for Allah, there is no one left on the planet. Hasatan is Allah, and Hasatan hates humanity. A dead world is his victory because he doesn't want to be worshipped. He just wants God not to return, because if God and Dod do not return, the planet remains his. And so our purpose is to defeat him in that regard and to assure that there is a productive Shabuah harvest, a productive Towrah harvest, a productive celebration of the Adamah Parah, and that the homecoming is well attended and celebrated. And spoiler alert, because Yahweh had many prophets, he's told us this is exactly what transpires. That does not mean that we relent and say, well, God's already said it's going to happen. We can go out and play around on the beach. No, we have a job to do. It works out because we work at it. And this is our calling. So you need to know that Satan's autobiography is actually the book of Ezekiel. What is the number one reoccurring theme in the book of Ezekiel, Leah?
Rape and murder.
It's even worse than that. It is rape and murder. That is the correct conclusion. The book of Ezekiel features 25 ways to kill Jews. And those ways are revolting. They are
Sadistic.
even beyond what I would have expected of Allah. That's how revolting the 25 ways to kill Jews are presented in the book of Ezekiel. Rape in the book of Ezekiel is 2 entire chapters. It isn't just rape. It's equal parts incest and pedophilia, and it's gruesome perversions. Yeah, the book of Ezekiel, it is Satan's autobiography. In fact, Satan even cops to it. He admits that he was the cherub on the wall, protecting the garden, and that he was the one who misled Chawah. He confesses to the crime.
Yeah,
That's the thing about Hasatan. He thinks that people are so stupid that he could
Puts it all out there.
He could actually admit who he is. He could tell you
right to your face
that Muhammad and Paul were demon possessed, both of whom admit it, and people wouldn't even care.
No.
He could call himself Halal bin Shakar and say that which is good and should be celebrated in Islam is halal. and no one would notice.
He could
or
say,
care.
grab her by the P word.
Yeah.
And no one would
no one
care.
would
They'd
care.
elect him president, you
But
know.
no one would care.
Yeah, it's true.
Yahweh could announce that his entire purpose is to be Elyon, and he could create the religion of Christianity through the illusion of Christ, and no one would care. By the way, I didn't finish a thought. I'll finish it now. I said there were two individuals, one real and one mythical, that Paul used to create the fraud that is Jesus Christ. The real person, I went into great detail. That is David. The mythical person is Dionysus. Dode wrote a psalm to my lovely wife. He began it by saying she's Chokmoth, which is all things related to Chokmah, calling her wise. That is true. Dionysus is the son of God who surpasses the main god of the Greek religion, and then it was incorporated into the Roman religion as Bacchus. And he is also the one who dies and is resurrected each year. His birth is on the same time as the Christian
And they
Christmas.
celebrate with orgies.
And his resurrection is the same time as the Christmas Easter. And Easter is even named for his alleged mother, who is Asherah, the queen of heaven and the mother of God in these pagan religions. So
his mother and lover.
Yes.
Whoa.
Oh, yes. So
We skipped that little detail because there's one thing that is really common thread among religions in general is that they are sexually perverse.
Yeah. God even tells us that if you want to track this whore of religion, this beast, that what you should do is look at how religion was conceived and integrated into the government of Babylon. And even in the word, he explains that Babylon, which became Bible, by the way, means to confound and confuse by intermixing and commingling truth and lies. By even intermixing
confabulations,
a religion and politics. And it is this Babel that we must walk away from to be included in the covenant. And it is the last thing that Yahweh asks his people to leave prior to his return. You must come out of Babel. And so Babel is the birthplace of the whore of religion. It is the place from which Christianity and Islam were both conceived, as well as what do they call the Talmud in Judaism? It is the...
Oh, they call it the Torah, but that's
okay,
not.
They do call it the Torah. It's the Babylonian Talmud.
It's the Babylonian.
So even the Talmud is Babylonian. And they're not quite about it. It's the Talmud of Babylon.
Very upfront.
So that's the wellspring from which this whore of Babylon emerges. She then is metastasized into Persia by Yahweh's testimony, where this integration in religion and politics became an extreme expression as an empire. And that empire then was conquered by the man who became the exemplar of the Towrahless one, of the AntiChrist, Alexander the Great. He was a warmonger. He was a man who had no empathy. He's a man who
sexual sadist,
declared himself
pervert.
as God. He was a sexual pervert. Alexander the Great is the man who had everything wrong and yet still managed to fool people into considering him great. Why he serves as
a god,
as a prototype of the Donald Dumpster, the copper confabulator. We call him copper again because of the terminology that is used, the copper bronze terminology that is used of this real estate development that measures up this grand gaudiose edifice that Satan and he want to build for their self-aggrandizement and over the Temple Mount and all of Jerusalem and all of Yehudah, as it turns out. So that is the story of who we are talking about and how this will all materialize. And now you know all of the dates that are pertinent to it. So with this very long introduction, which I think is necessary because you need to know how we came to these conclusions and why they matter and what you're going to experience between now and the time that this all comes to an end.
I don't think you can tell the time until you know what time it is.
Yes. And we are now just a matter of less than 2 years away from the Shabuah harvest and the time of beginning of Jacob's troubles. And it's going to get really miserable out there. And Israel is doing everything in its power now to make itself more vulnerable and to turn the world against it. Never in the history of humanity have the victims of a barbarian, savage, sadistic attack been perceived as the genocidal, colonialist oppressors. But that is what's happened. And Israel has brought this upon themselves with the way that they responded in a really foolish manner to the terrorist attacks that were perpetrated on them on October 7th. So Israel is an exceedingly vulnerable position, and everything that Yahweh has said is going to happen to them will happen, just as he has foretold. So all of this is going to transpire at the appointed times, with the occurrences playing out most demonstrably on Towrah and Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, September 23rd and 24th, and then October 2nd and 7th in 2033. The two men who are presented as the gifts from God for this time are Yada, and the last passage we considered, and then Dod elsewhere. This is because Michael has been responsible for reuniting Yisrael with Gabriel, Dod. The mortal remnant of Yisrael become royalty at that point because there is a royal wedding that transpires on Yom Kippurim. It is the day of reconciliations. The adulterous woman will be purged of her religious and political guilt, as described in Numbers 19 and Numbers 5. And when this happens, she will be betrothed to the returning king, Dod, such that Israel becomes co-sovereign with Dod, the king. And since Dod is Yahweh's firstborn son, this comes with a universal inheritance. Israel, you're going to be positioned based upon the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah to inherit the universe. You're welcome. Indeed, tongue in cheek there. All I have to do is be bludgeoned to death by Hasatan, by the Donald. Can you imagine allowing yourself to be bludgeoned by that beast?
To have your heart ripped out by his goons?
And literally, he's going to rip out my heart. He's going to drink my blood. He's going to chomp at it. He's going to celebrate what he will call the Feast of the Beast, where he becomes a cannibal, literally eating my flesh and drinking my blood is how he's going to celebrate. That's his celebration of this final act on Towrah. And it's not going to work out real well for him. And even though my corporal body is gone, good riddance, I'm happy to discharge it. I'm happy to do it in a way, too, that has benefit for Yisrael, but my soul, like Dod's soul, when he fulfilled Pesach, is not only spared, but elevated as a result of this process. All right, so now we're going to continue with probably one more statement on this, and then I think we'll have to take a break. We'll come back a little later this afternoon, early this evening, and do our final show of the day. So keeper of the cables, we've got to be coming up on an hour time. 55 minutes. Okay. So we do try to keep these shows right around an hour's time because, well, that is not only the length most people can focus on us. I could talk for 10 hours straight and would not wear out. Yeah, I've done it before. Yeah. But Miss Leah doesn't like to sit in that chair too for much more than an hour. So this reads, therefore, this being so, he said, for the fourth beast, a fourth sovereign power will exist on the earth, such that it will be different, especially in its evolution and transformation as it changes from all other sovereign powers. It will devour, devastating the entire earth, treading upon it and trampling it down, destroying it while shattering and crushing it. All right, so Yahowah has presented through these three men a series of presentations where it became obvious that he's quite detailed in the presentation, how the beasts represent institutions and nations, and the horns represent egotistical political leaders. And in this case, he's back to talking about the Chaiwa, which is the beast, but it's just a variation of the word for life and animal, a living being. And he's saying that the fourth one is going to be different than the first three. And the reason for that is that Babylon dies when it is conquered by Persia. Persia dies when it is conquered by the Macedonian Alexander the Great.
And who did America conquer?
Now, when Persia, though, conquers Babylon, Babylon is more influential than Persia. And so it didn't just conquer Babylon, it absorbed Babylon. Mm-hmm. And so all of the religiosity and the politics
and the synchronicities began.
Metastasized into Persia. When Alexander conquered Persia, what he did is he became a Persian. He dressed like a Persian, referred to himself as a Persian god, lived in...
his guys even revolted against that
Babylon.
Fact. Yeah.
He ceased to be a Greek and became a Persian.
Yes.
And then they divided the empire upon his death to create this extension of what had been conquered as Persia. So now Persia is metastasized into Greece. When Rome conquered Greece, the Romans weren't nearly as creative or sophisticated as the Greeks. And so what happened is the Romans incorporated the Greek religion, the Greek political system, the representative government for a period of time.
And the Greeks' perversions.
All with emperors, which is really a weird way to express democracy, if you will. All of their perversions, all of their hatred of other people, creating a slave caste system-based economy, all of it simply metastasized into Rome. Rome became an expression of Greece. So while Rome militarily conquered Greece, Greece became Rome. And so this was just the process all the way up to Rome. And what God is now saying on this fourth beast, imperial Rome would be different than the others because imperial Rome would metastasize into the Roman Catholic Church. And
both of them industrialize child sexual abuse and trafficking.
Well, they did all sorts of things that were horrible, but that is the progression of things. So Rome did not trample the entire world. It trampled on a strip of land on the northern coast of Africa, the rim of the Mediterranean, and places, part of the way up into what is Britain now, throughout what is now Spain and France, some portions of Germany, but not much of Germany. Of course, the Balkans, and throughout Greece. But the Romans didn't conquer the whole world. The Roman Catholic Church has tread upon the whole world.
Oh, yes.
And that is why this evolution was a transformation of its power. And from God's perspective, because the Roman Catholic Church is based on identity theft, on literally stealing the identity of his beloved son, Dode, our Messiah, our King, the very Son of God, who fulfilled Passover by being crucified in 33 CE, that it is the ultimate beast. It is the whore of all beasts. It is the beast and the whore of Babylon. That is what is stated here by Daniel. God judges and vindicates, 7:23. So the succession was previously given. Babylon morphed into Persia. It was morphed into Greece, which was devoured by Rome, making Imperial Rome the fourth beast. But this was different in that it evolved into Roman Catholicism, which in turn tread upon the entire world. And it's not just Roman Catholicism.
No, it's 31,000 flavors of Christianity.
And of course, also the Orthodox flavors, because the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Roman Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, all of these things came really out of Constantinople. It was Theodosius via the work that Eusebius had achieved and creating the final illusions that were necessary to have a Roman Catholic Church that just metastasized, and they imposed their caste system on the world and imposed the religion of Christianity. Never would have happened had Imperial Rome not morphed into the Roman Catholic Church. And that is what's happened. And it was, of course, devastating for Jews. And matter of fact, even Hitler's Marxist interpretation of the Holy Roman Empire was called the Third Reich.
And Hitler's
Donald
was
Trump's
the fourth.
Will be the Fourth Reich.
No, Hitler's was the fourth.
No, it's called the Third Reich.
Oh, third. Yeah,
Third
that's
Reich.
true. Okay,
Reich.
his will be the fourth. Oh
Fourth.
my
Yep.
goodness.
That is correct. So as we discovered, the Roman Empire reached its zenith, and I've shared this in my books. It happened to be in 117 CE as an interesting date because it means that 47 years after Rome raised Yah's temple in 70 CE and 18 years before Roman legions utterly destroyed the Promised Land in 133 to 135 CE, they began a decline that would not be arrested. But at its greatest extent, while large, this beast wasn't nearly as pervasive as some might think. It stretched around, as I've said, the perimeter of the Mediterranean, barely 50 miles wide in the northern African coast. The thin southern rim of the empire extended from northeastern Morocco at the extreme northern portion of Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, and through the northwestern third of what is today modern Egypt. It included most of Israel and Lebanon. Israel was called Judea at the time, and neither of which were very large. Most of Syria and Turkey, but only a tiny sliver of extreme northern Iraq, and none of today's Iran. Moving west, it ranged from Romania and Bulgaria through the Balkans, and including Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, and southeastern Britain, but very little beyond, largely because the Germanic tribes liked to fight almost as much as the Romans, and they were good at devouring legions.
Yes,
the only ones that fought as well as the
Germans.
Germans? No, yeah, I know. There was an interesting realization. There was one group of people that actually fought and destroyed more Roman legions than did the Germans.
Who would that be?
The Jews.
Really?
There were three assaults on Israel, and the Jews were actually the most effective at destroying Roman legions. Although Rome was because
go Yahud
because Israel was on the way to Egypt, which Rome loved controlling Egypt when they
was
stole
obsessed with
when they
Egypt.
stole it from the Greeks. That they would not. They did not stop and were not the least bit merciful when it came to Israel. They just continued to pound Israel into submission. And then it was Hadrian that actually renamed the land Palestina that caused that great disaster that Israel is facing right now. So while that's much larger than Babylonia or Persia, it's about the present size of the United States. Unlike the Roman Catholic Church, Imperial Rome was not worldwide. Although it reached much further north and west, it wasn't much larger than Alexander the Great's conquest, which pushed east from Macedonia through Bulgaria, Turkey, Syria, Israel, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and into portions of India. Although Alexander got his clock claimed by the Indians. But since this is addressing an evolving worldwide beast, the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox churches fit the bill. We can include all of Europe and the Middle East, including Arabia, with over 1.3 million Roman Catholics, along with the dominance in the Americas, which is where the current Pope was born, Southern Africa, Southeast Asia, Japan, and even India and China, all under the purview at one time or another of one of the two churches. Therefore, for the fourth beast to be destructive on this scale, Yahweh's messenger was describing the monster which would emerge from imperial Rome to devastate the entire world, the Christian church. And for that, there is one candidate. Generally, it is the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches specifically. Now, this is particularly adroit because there is no other instance in world history where an empire, particularly the scale of Rome, evolved into something entirely different and bigger rather than die. Moreover, the Roman Catholic Church is the only organization which is tread upon not only part of the world, but the entire world, but also been at the same time vehemently demonizing to Jews.
Well, it's inculcated in the religion, isn't it?
As was the case with the previous explanation, this next statement, which we'll save for our program, that'll be our cliffhanger, that reveals that the Towrahless one, during the time of trouble, during the last days, is going to emerge from this whole big mess that has now been described as the evolution or de-evolution, if you will, from Imperial Rome to Roman and Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So we'll save that to our next program. We thank you for listening. This has been a special episode of the YAHOWAH blog on the Antichrist. I am your host, Craig Winn. To my left, and Wookie has decided he'd take a nap. Over there, hiding behind all of the lights, is the keeper of the cable, who may show himself. That is Rich, who has just come back from a lovely stop at the barbershop. There he is, looking especially handsome today. So thank you for listening. We have enjoyed bringing this message to you. Good day.